welcome to another segment of Pixelperfect with me, Bert Monroy. Now in this show, I'm going to show you a few different things. I'm going to show you about the warp feature, which was introduced with CS2, and I'm going to show you some textures and some little layer styles. Before I start, I want to teach you about the thought process involved, the thoughts that go into creating a piece. Like right here on the screen, what I have right now is the comp, the idea, the layout that was sent to me by the client. And basically, you can see there's nothing there. It's just a space telling me where the image was going to go. Now, the story here was an article about home theaters. Now, the idea they had was to have a home with a theater marquee on it. I thought, wow, that's a cool idea. But then when I thought about it a little more, it didn't really tell a story. Because putting a marquee on top of a home makes it sound like the home is a theater open to the public. So I said, let's not do that. Let's take it a different direction. So I sent them a comp that looked like this, in which I took the theater and made it in the house. Now, I knew right off the bat that once they saw the open door and they actually saw the theater inside, that would sell them. Now, you notice that what I did is I put the marquee above a door in the room, and then there's a little dinette set on the left here and a little table on the right, kind of like a living room, and that sold the idea. Based on that, I then created the final piece, which looks like this. And here's the final piece as it appeared in the magazine. Of course, this doesn't have the headline in it, but that was the final piece in which I employed a lot of the features in Photoshop. Now, what I'm going to draw your attention to right now is this little table down here. Now, if you looked at it in the comp, it was very simple. In the finished piece, it has a little more detail. So I went in here and I get in real close, and we see the detail in the lamp. Now, since it's my illustration, I could take a lot of liberties. See, I stuck one of my books on the little table there. But let's look at the lamp. See, it's got some very simple little details, and it's got a nice little texture on the shade. That's what I'm going to create for you now. Let's close these guys down and create a new file. 600 by 800 here, and I'm going to turn on my grid. I'm going to turn on my grid. Over here, say Show Grid, which right now is going to have kind of a tight mesh. So let's go into my preferences and bring it back to its original state, which is just 4 subdivisions. That looks fairly clean. I'm going to get a little closer, just so we can see this area right in here. And now I'm going to create my lamp. Now, I'm going to do the whole thing with my pen tool. And that is the tool that I primarily draw all the elements with. Understanding that tool is very important. So I have my grid here, so every time I create some kind of a path, it's going to snap, making it real easy to create my shape. Now I'm going to consider this shape right here, this line, this segment right here to be my center line. So I'm going to start right up here at the corner and just click right there. Then come down to about 1 box beyond over here, click, and I got this nice curved line right there. So now the other side of this thing is going to be on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a handle right from here. I'm going to just pull out a handle, which is going to give me a curve, and come over to this side, 1 line beyond where I'm going to be, click, and pull out a little handle there. So I got this nice little curve going just like that. Now I'm going to Option click on the point, so I have no handle for the next line, come up to that starting point, click, and I have a straight line on the other side. This is the shade of the lamp. Then I'm going to close it off by clicking on the original point. That's the shade of the lamp. Now I'm going to create the body of the lamp. So right in here, I'm going to create, pull out a little handle right there like that, right up to that second point, and come down here to just about here, and click and drag. But here I'm going to make a big drag to about that far over there like that, and come over here, click, pull this up to about the same distance as the other one was, and then close it off. Now this little curve up here doesn't matter. It's going to be behind the shade. We won't even see that. Now we're going to create the little base. And for the little base, I'm going to start right in here. I'm going to click, come down to about here, click. Just like the shade, I'm going to have that kind of a curvature at the bottom. Pull out a handle about to that second line there. Come over to here, click, pull out to that second handle. Take off the handle by Option clicking, and come up here, there, and close it off. That's the base of the lamp. Now there will be one more piece at the top, which we'll just do with a regular elliptical marquee tool. Right now we're going to work with these paths to create our lamp. Now the first thing I'm going to do is the base down here. Now, we look at our path palette, there's all the paths. It's a working path, which means it's temporary. Let's go ahead and save it. So that's our paths. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call that layer the base. Now the base down here is going to be a metal, a nice kind of a copper looking metal. So we go to our paths, and I'm going to select that path. Since I have that path selected and not the others, anything I do is going to happen to that path. And what I'm going to do is turn it into a selection, just like that. Now we can turn off our paths. And let's pick some colors. I'm going to get this light beige here and this darker color for the background. And with my blend tool, in the reflected blend mode, I'm going to just throw a little gradient right through there like that. Now it's metal. So what makes it look like metal? How it reacts to light, which means I have to add reflections and shadows. So with my dodge and burn tool, I'm going to create those effects. I'm going to throw a little burning on the edge back there. I'm going to make a much smaller brush here and just throw a little line right through there like that, maybe one more right in there. Now with my dodge tool, I'm going to throw some highlights. Make the brush a lot smaller, and I'm just hitting my open and close bracket keys, and I'll throw a little highlight right through there, and maybe one right in there, and one slight little touch right through there. So now we have this nice little copper metal base. All right, so now I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to call this layer body. This is the body of the lamp. So go to my paths, turn them on, and select the one that's the body, and turn that into a selection. All right, so now let's pick some greens. I'll pick this light green and this darker green for the background. And again with my gradient tool, I'm going to throw in a gradient, but this time it'll be a radial gradient, which I'll just throw right into that area, right in there like that. Now, if you remember the original picture, there was some design going on in there. I want to add a little kind of a geometric design. I don't want to spend a lot of time coming up with it. I'm going to let Photoshop do it for me by playing around with a layer style. I'm going to double click on the layer to bring up the layer style. And I have this one right here, satin. Satin is going to add some nice little tonalities to this image, as you can see right there. I can choose the color, but I'm going to leave it with that color. And I'm going to set the angle to 0, so it's going to be kind of straight on. See, now it's centered right in there. And the contour, I'm going to choose something that's a little more complex. I choose this one right here. Now you can see what it's starting to do to our lamp. Now by playing around with the distance and the size, I can start to get some really bizarre designs in there. That looks pretty good. I click OK. In fact, at this point, why don't we just turn off that grid too? We don't need the grid anymore. The lamp is created. So now we have this nice little shape. Another layer. I'm going to call this layer the shade. Go back to my paths, select the layer, or rather the path that has the shade, turn that into a selection, and let's pick those same beiges as we did down below. I'm going to go in here and pick those tones, and with that same radial gradient, I'm going to throw a little tone right in there like that. Now, the shade needs to be made of some kind of a material, like a nice canvas perhaps, or some kind of a fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to call this layer texture. And I'm going to select a long rectangle that's going to encompass the entire shape of the shade, just like that, and give it that same gradient, right there like that. This one is going to get the texture. Under filters, I have a texture here called texturizer. And in texturizer, I have some fabrics. So as it comes up here, we're waiting for the filter gallery. There's the shape. And I'm going to choose, I have canvas. That looks fairly good. But I think one that's a little more complex is burlap. I'm going to choose burlap. That's really good. I'm going to bring the scaling down so it's kind of small and bring up the relief so I get a stronger effect. See, so I'm not really seeing the fabric now. Make it even smaller. There. I click OK, and I've got this nice fabric. So now what I need to do is to let it be seen only through the area of the shade. So I'm going to create what's called a clipping group. Let me explain to you what a clipping group is. Okay, right there. Let me deselect that. We see the shade. That's the shape of the shade. All this checkerboard stuff here means there's nothing there. What a clipping group does is it uses that transparency information to hide the contents of the other layers that are clipped with this layer. Any part of those layers that extend into that transparent area will disappear. Now I like to do it the old-fashioned way, which is via the keyboard. I have both layers selected, and look at the little hand going up through the little palette there, see? But if I hold down the modifier key, which is the option key in this case, and now watch what happens. See, when it goes between two layers, it becomes a different icon. So if I click between these two layers now, you can see that the contents of that texture layer are now enclosed inside the shape of the shade. Turn everybody else back on. Now it looks good, except the fact that the shade is rounded and my texture is going straight across. Not good. We need to have that texture wrap itself onto the shade. And that's where a new feature of CS2 comes into play, a thing called warp. I'm still in the layer of the texture. So I come over here to edit and down here to transform. There's that new guy, warp. And when I bring that up, it sets up a mesh the size of the contents of that layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distort those. I'm going to bring this corner to match the corner of the shade. Bring this corner up to match that corner of the shade. Same thing on the other side. I bring this in and this up. Now I'm going to play around with the handles. Let's turn this one around. So it matches that little curve and this guy around to match that little curve. Bring this one up and straight down, following that edge. This one up and straight down. This one over, straight down, this one up, like that. Now the bottom part. I'm going to drag these little handles out like that and like that. And when I click OK, now we see that the texture is now following the shape of my lamp. Now comes the final thing, which is right up here. We'll just call this little opening. We'll call it the opening. And up on the top there, I'm going to select a nice little ellipse right along the top here, just like that. And we have a little feather here. Let's turn that off. You've got to check yourself every now and then. There's something that's not working in Photoshop, something's not working. Well, don't immediately call Adobe, and definitely don't call me. Just check all your settings. Somewhere something is off. When I saw that circle shrink, I knew that I had a feather. So I just changed it. So let's go in there and set that up again. I make a little selection right in there with the same two colors and my same little gradient tool. I'll throw a little gradient on top, and there we see we have a nice little lamp. Just a bunch of little techniques to put together to create an effect. That's all it takes. We could take this even further. You might say to yourself, wait, isn't that thing on the bottom metal? Wouldn't that be reflective? Remember that clipping group we just created? Okay, well, I'm going to duplicate the body of the lamp, right? And the one in back here, I'm going to move down. I'm going to move it down a little bit, just like that. And maybe even darken a little bit. I'll go into my hue saturation and darken a little bit, just like that. And then I'm going to bring down the opacity a little. And then clip it with the base. Option, click between those two, and now I have the little reflection in the base of the lamp above. Just little tricks here and there. Now, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get ideas of what you would like to see. You have any suggestions, anything you came up with at work, something you couldn't figure out? Send me an email. Send me an email and tell me what you'd like to see. And it's easy to send it to me. It's bert@revision3.com. bert@revision3.com. Right there, it's on your screen. And also, a lot of the files that I'll be using for the show, you can download from revision3.com/Pixelperfect. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I hope you learned something. Remember to keep playing and have a good time. See you next time.